In this Remnant from the Ashes build guide, I'm going to be showing you my Silent Slayer build, which is a ranged build that focuses on killing enemies from stealth and dealing maximum damage to the weak spot of enemies. It uses a mix of new items from the Subject 2923 DLC as well as old, but I'll show you how to use it at any level effectively, working your way up to its final form. It doesn't matter if you're looking for a beginner build or an endgame build, you can use this one regardless. The Silent Slayer build operates in a similar manner in and outside of boss fights by focusing on dealing lots of weak spot damage with every shot fired. However, as you make your way through each biome, you'll be able to pick most enemies off one at a time, preventing yourself from getting overwhelmed in the majority of cases, except for some events. This is accomplished by reducing the awareness of enemies, using weapons that are relatively quiet, and by guaranteeing that you'll critically hit any enemy that is not engaged in combat with you. You can hit enemies for nearly 4,000 damage per shot with a crossbow this way, if done properly, often killing most enemies with a single arrow. The primary weapon we use for this build is the crossbow, and we do this for a few reasons. First, it holds one arrow in the mag at a time, allowing us to take advantage of the Slayer set bonus, which increases our damage with the next shot for 10 seconds after reload. Second, it's very quiet, which prevents enemies from becoming aware of your presence. And third, it does very high damage per shot and has extremely high critical chance at 20%. I like to use the Hot Shot weapon mod to further increase damage and set burning 100% with each arrow. For my secondary weapon, I like to use the Twin Shot, which was added with the Subject 2923 DLC. It's very quiet, much like the crossbow, but holds 2 arrows per mag. It does fire both with one trigger pull, however, still giving you the benefit of the Slayer set with every trigger pull. I like to use the Fan of Knives weapon mod for this build because you'll need it for healing in boss fights. For the Silent Slayer build, we use the Slayer set, which should come as no surprise. The idea here is that with each arrow we fire, we gain a 30% damage increase with each successive arrow, really boosting DPS. If you're trying to make a build that kills enemies in one shot, you'll either want to use Slayer or Warlords. They are simply the highest damage there is. For the Silent Slayer build, I really have two setups here because being silent doesn't help you much in boss fights, so you'll want to change your trinkets up before a boss battle. The following are the two setups I use, one for exploration and one for bosses. These setups are the same regardless of difficulty. Exploration. Hangman's Memento. This amulet increases your weak spot damage by 50% after killing an enemy for 10 seconds. This is a massive boost to damage, and if you move quickly, you can kill every enemy you see when buffed with this. Heartseeker. This ring guarantees a critical hit on any enemy that isn't aware of your presence and boosts critical damage by 20%. This means just about every shot you fire out on the landscape should crit, which allows you to kill just about anything with one arrow if you hit them in the weak spot. Ring of Shadows. This ring reduces enemy awareness range by a further 25% and increases your damage versus unaware enemies by an additional 15%. This not only helps you move about undetected, but also assists in killing enemies in 1 or 2 shots. Boss fights. Razor Wire Necklace. This amulet increases your bleed damage by 50% and increases your ranged and melee damage versus bleeding enemies. You'll need to use your Fan of Knives on the boss to get best use out of this necklace, but that should be no problem with this build. Bloodletter's Insignia. This ring will allow you to heal from bleed damage, which is what will keep you alive during boss fights. Use Fan of Knives as quick as you can so that you have constant healing over time, and to only use your Dragon Hearts in emergencies. Burden of the Follower. You can use Burden of the Follower with no negative effect because you have to reload after every shot, and this allows you to keep your mods up nearly 100% of the time. You might not need extra mod generation though, depending on your traits, so if you don't need it, use Hunter's Band instead. Hunter's Band. This ring will replace the 15% damage from Ring of Shadows with 10%, but does give you an extra 20% weak spot damage. It's a good trade-off in boss fights where you know you'll be hitting the weak spot constantly. Traits play a vital role in determining how successful or not you are with this build, and in this section we'll cover the must-have traits. I'll put them in the order of importance because it's hard to gauge what order you'll get them in based on the somewhat randomness of the game. Quick Hands. Reload speed is very important to this build because you reload after every shot you take. If it takes too long to reload, then you'll not be able to sustain DPS or take down a target with a second shot if you missed the first before you were hit. Shadow Walker. This trait allows you to move about without being seen as much by enemies, which really helps you take things down easily with Heartseeker. Guaranteed crits are nice to have, and this trait makes them more likely to happen. Kingslayer. This trait increases your critical hit damage by 25%, which helps to boost your overall DPS since Heartseeker guarantees crits. You'll also want this during boss fights because you should have around 50% critical chance with Executioner. Executioner. This trait will boost your critical hit chance by 25% at max rank, which is exactly what this build needs. You'll have a modest crit chance with this build without it, and between this and Crossbow you'll have close to 50%. Mind's Eye. This trait increases your range damage by 15%, which applies to all ranged attacks whether they critically hit or not. Every little bit adds up, so you'll want this one further to boost the damage of each arrow. Wisdom. This trait will increase your damage with your bleeding and burning. Also increases the damage you do when using Hot Shot by 10%, which is an added bonus. Final tips. Take your time while exploring and try to get kills without being detected. You can make it across the entire landscape and through entire dungeons without ever alarming anyone to your presence if you're careful. If you get in trouble, run far away and create distance between you and your target so that you can pick them off easily. You can swap out the crossbow for the Devastator if you wish during boss fights, but if you do that, be sure to put Hotshot on the Twin Shot in order to keep burning and bleeding on the boss. It's really up to you, but the Devastator has a longer reload time than the crossbow, but maintains the benefit from Slayer set because it reloads after each trigger pull. Houndmaster's Jerky can increase your crit damage by 15% for 60 minutes. Since you'll crit constantly because of Heartseeker, this is a great consumable to use when playing with this build. You can purchase these from the Houndmaster on ROM. Lastly, use the save analyzer to check which gear will drop when you roll a campaign or adventure so that you can farm the gear you need for this build easily, since many things drop randomly. This tool will tell you what bosses you'll face, what events will happen, and what random equipment you will get, and where they will be found. Keep re-rolling until you see the item or items you want, and then go get them. Be sure to check out our other Remnant from the Ashes build guides, as we explored what builds you could make with the new items from the Swamps of Corsus and Subject 29-23 DLCs, and if you haven't already, be sure to check out our overview videos on both DLCs if you're on the fence about picking them up.